is one of our three leaders, and this morning Anne plans to help us reflect and resolve.
Good morning.
Good morning, Anne.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
There you go. I'm a little shorter than Tom. Well, I want to thank all of you brave souls for coming out this morning. It was slippery, wasn't it?
Yes. Yes.
And I would hold on to a railing or a gate or a spike, and that was slippery too. So I commend all of you. Thank you so much for getting here, and I'm so glad you look hale and hearty, safe and sound. It's all good. So, here's a poem called New Year's to begin my platform address, and it's by Dana Goyo. New Year's. Let other mornings honor the miraculous. Eternity has festivals enough. This is the feast of our mortality, the most mundane and human holiday. On other days, we misinterpret time, pretending that we live in the present moment. But can this blur, this smudgy in-between, this tiny fissure where the future drips into the past, this fly speck we call now, be our true habitat? The present is the leaky palm of water that we skim from the swift, silent river slipping by. The new year always brings us what we want simply by bringing us along to see a calendar with every day uncrossed, a field of snow without a single footprint. Well, we certainly have plenty of snow, don't we? And I wonder, do we misinterpret time as the poet suggests? Do we pretend to live in the present? The goal of Buddhist meditation, a non-theistic religion of ethics to which ethical culture is often compared, is to experience the present, to live in the moment. Suffering is believed to come from looking backward and feeling regret and remorse, and looking forward and feeling anxiety about the future. If the new year is the feast of our mortality, how do we celebrate? Do we, as the poem says, see a calendar with every day uncrossed? These are questions for us to ponder, and I'm not going to give you any answers. I want you to hold on to those questions. And one of the reasons is because ethical culture is an experience of many questions. I'm reminded of a young man at the Brooklyn Society many years ago who was looking forward to his coming-of-age ceremony. And then he went to a couple of bar and bat mitzvahs, and those were a lot of fun. And since his parents were Jewish, he said, well, why don't I have a bar mitzvah? He said, okay, if that's what you want, Jonathan, we'll send you to Hebrew school. He came back to ethical culture, to the Brooklyn Society, and not only because he had to learn Hebrew, but also because he appreciated the questions. He said that in the classes, he was always asked questions, but expected to know certain answers. And what he missed were the teachers, his parents, and the other members of the society who were always asking questions and asked him what he thought, what he felt. They weren't trying to trip him up. There wasn't one answer. And his answer was every bit as good as anyone else's. So, hold on to those questions about the Feast of Mortality. And let's talk about the month of January. In the mythology of ancient Rome, Janus, for whom the month of January is named, was the god of new beginnings. He was associated with doors and gates and the first steps of a journey. And he's often depicted as having two faces, looking in opposite directions, one to the past and one to the future. Because of Janus's ability to see both back and forward, he's associated with powers of prophecy, in addition to that journey, the gate, the door. He's sometimes connected with the sun and the moon. And he's also, as we say, looking in both directions. Well, in the city of Rome, a temple known as Janus, and I'm trying to remember my Latin. I remember Amo Amasamat, okay, but this is Janus Gemenas, and it was erected in his honor and consecrated in 260 BCE, before the Common Era, after a great battle. And during periods of war, the gates were left open, sacrifices were held inside, along with auguries to predict the results of military actions. And it was said that the gates of that temple were only closed in times of peace, which didn't happen very often for the Romans. The fundamental nature is often debated of Janus, but most scholars do believe that the function was organized around a single principle of presiding over beginnings, transitions, endings. So, let's think about doorways for a moment. All of you came through a door this morning, and several of you came through our doors for the first time. And some of you came back after a long time. And some of you come through the doors every week. I often say at a newcomer reception that ethical culture was a place where I felt I could bring my whole self through the door. That when I would go to visit my parents and go back to the church where I was baptized at St. Anne's, I had to check some parts of myself at the door. That I didn't feel comfortable taking my whole self through. So I'm hoping that all of you who had the courage to walk through the first time today, and those of you who have been coming for a while, also feel that you can bring your whole selves through our doors. And now I'd like you to imagine what that's like, any doorway. Does it have a door, or is it just an open entryway? If it has a door, do you pull it open and look inside? Check it out first before you go through? Do you push it open, kind of pushing your way in? Do you stand there? What do you think? What do you feel? Do you look back from where you came from? Do you reflect upon that? Do you wonder who's on the other side of that door? Will you make a new friend? Will you be afraid? Another thing for you to hold on to. What are your experiences as you walk through doors? Or do you stand at the door and say, nope, not today, and turn around and wait for another day? All different things, all different choices that we make. And as we know, ethics always begins with a choice, whether or not to walk through that door, and what to bring with us when we go through. Which leads me to resolutions. Yes, reflecting on our past, thinking about our future. How do we reflect and resolve, and why? Why do we do that? Well, the earliest recorded festivities of honoring a new year date back some 4,000 years to ancient Babylonia. And indeed, the Babylonians started it on the first new moon following the vernal equinox, a day late in March, when there was an equal amount of sunlight and darkness. That for them heralded a new year. It was a celebration that hoped to bring the gods favors, right, for planting crops. Let us plant crops that will grow well, that will nourish us in very healthy harvests. So it makes sense for the Babylonians that that was aware when they celebrated their new year, and they too did make resolutions. And the Romans followed that tradition until about 46 BCE, when the Roman calendar was reformed by the great Julius Caesar, and January became the first day of the new year. And what became very common, or what was carried on from common practice, was the making of resolutions. Today, according to Gary Present, who's a doctor, and this is in the HuffPost Healthy Living, 41% of individuals make resolutions. Does that seem like a small number to you? It does to me. It seems like everyone that I talk to seems to be making some sort of resolutions, even if they're resolving not to make resolutions. And I don't know where of individuals make resolutions, and 56% of those who make such resolutions are so confident they will be successful that they do initiate changes within 1 month. Only 46% actually succeed in keeping at it for 6 months, and only 10% for 1 year. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Does that sound familiar? Okay. So we're getting down to the nitty-gritty now of resolutions, and I invite you to just call out into the air your resolutions if you have any. And I'll start, I got my exercise bike this morning. Anyone else? Just call them out. What are your resolutions?
Cleaned up my office.
Clean up your office.
Walk 25 minutes every day.
45?
25.
25. Just 25. Anyone else? Yeah, Phyllis.
Declutter as much as possible.
Declutter, okay. I haven't heard lose weight. No. Amy.
Finish the paper that I've done research on for years.
Okay. Okay.
Lose the
Right.
ability to procrastinate.
Oh, well. But you do know that when you procrastinate, you're just percolating good ideas, right? It's all good. It's all good. Great. All right. So, obviously, I mean, we think about it a lot, don't we? And even though it's just a day in the calendar, it does give us some opportunity to say, okay, today's the day. Today's the day I'm going to get on my exercise bike, even if it's only for 20 minutes, or 25. So, my theme is about how to live every day, with both reflections and resolutions, and how to think about living a good life. And the 3 areas I want to cover is, first of all, resolutions, and how they imply change. What can we do differently, and how can we improve our lives, our relationships, the world around us? The second aspect is, why is it that so often our resolutions are born out of regret? What is that regret or remorse that somehow inspires us? And could something else inspire us to resolve? And then finally, why is it that we don't resolve, or fewer of us resolve, to stay the same, or to just stay? So let's wonder about those things that we might want to just keep the same. So, resolutions, born out of regret, and staying the same are what I want to cover this morning. So the type of resolutions, you name the typical ones. We all know that it's about how can I be a better person, how can I have better relationships, how can I do better, right? It's about improving. But we also heard in one statistic that maybe 10% keep those resolutions for more than a year. So this is what 2 gentlemen who wrote a book about keeping these resolutions, Uri Gnisi and John List, and they put in an article in the Daily Beast that they call the behavioral economics of New Year's resolutions, and they say it's simple. Decide not to decide. Okay, I can do that. Decide not to decide. It says behavioral economics can help shape your habits and how you make your New Year's resolutions stick for good. So they, of course, have a number of research studies, and one of those showed that exerting self-control causes people to suffer from depletion. If you think about your brain's capacity for self-control, if you think of it as a muscle, after you use it, it becomes tired and more difficult to use. And very importantly, after using self-control to resist one temptation, your brain has less energy to resist the next one. When we diet, we face endless temptation that we constantly need to overcome. And at some point, we become depleted. The self-control muscle is tired and we can no longer resist. We fall off the wagon. And then, of course, we feel regret, remorse, we beat up on ourselves, and that's not healthy, that's not good. So, although exercising once a day may require willpower, it does not require the constant use of self-control. In turn, the self-control muscle is allowed to recover in preparation for the next day. So, their theory is, don't think of it in terms of self-control and discipline, think of it in terms of habit formation. Establishing behavioral rules. So, here's the strategy that they say works, and we can try this out. Step number 1, get started. Commit to doing something. It could be exercise, it could be writing that paper for Amy, it could be decluttering the office, getting organized, it could be walking. Get started. Avoid engaging in the cost-benefit analysis and simply commit to it. Just do it. Step 2 is to make it a rule. After a month, make it a rule. Decide to exercise every day, whatever it is, make it a rule and do it. Okay. You think you don't have time in your busy day? Think again. And the step 3, and this one is what makes sense to me, is make it fun. Remember, constantly exerting self-control to do something you dislike doing, such as exercising, is an uphill battle, and you'll likely lose it. It's fun if you need to do it. It's fun if you find someone else to do it with. So often finding a partner, finding someone that you can engage with in some way. Make it fun. Now, if all of that fails to work for you, do not despair. There are apps. Yes, there are apps that you can put on your iPhone that will help you to stick to your New Year's resolutions. I'm personally just getting to know apps. Fortunately, I have children who show them to me, and my daughter will say, "Mom, just hand me your phone. I'll take care of it. I'll upload whatever I think you need." So I haven't shown these to her yet, but in case you'd like to know, I'll say them very quickly. One is that these have all been vetted, on Time Tech. So the first one is called Lose It. This is an obligatory weight loss app of the bunch. Apparently this is the best there is, and it is essentially a calorie tracker wrapped inside a very elegant interface. Okay, it makes sense. Number 1, Lose It. Number 2 is Mint. What do you think Mint stands for? Money. Finances, exactly. You get your personal finances in order. The third one is called, and this one's for you, Ken, this one's called Run Meter. And its selling point is the gorgeous interface and detailed cross-relational info screens that give you everything you'd want and more, from a real-time map to calories to the pace per mile that you're setting. Okay, so that's like the top 3. The fourth one, I didn't hear anyone say, but I expect that some of you may be looking at this, and that's job search. And we know that so many people are looking for jobs. Unemployment is still very high. I won't get into the fact that people are not getting employment benefits and how difficult that is, but they have an app for it, and it's called Job Search. And it's the highest rated tool on Apple's and Google's app stores. The fifth is Fooducate. You want to educate yourself about food. So it lets you scan the product barcodes to get letter grades about it. The sixth is called Breathe to, that's the numeral 2, relax, breathe to relax. This is a free app. It's focused on your diaphragm. Breathing techniques designed to decrease the body's fight or flight stress and to help with mood stabilization. So that's another app. The next one is called Quit Start, and that is to help you to stop smoking. It's another thing that people often talk about, and this one is actually created by the Tobacco Control Research Branch of the National Cancer Institute. The eighth one is, believe it or not, Facebook. Now that's counterintuitive for me because I'm trying to cut down the time that I'm on Facebook. But what they suggest is that rather than abandoning it altogether, just prune your friends list. Or maybe set a certain time or a certain rule for how long you'll be on there. Number 9 of 10 is strict workflow, and it's a time management strategy that might help with decluttering also. And finally, 10 is, believe it or not, and this one isn't free, it costs 99 cents. It's called Run P. I'm not kidding. It will tell you the best time to run and relieve yourself during a movie without missing the best scenes. You can't make this stuff up. So, enough with resolutions and how we keep them. What about regrets? What about regrets? I read an op-ed piece by Mike Tyson. Now, Mike Tyson is not my favorite person in the world, and yet, as a good ethical culturist, I choose to attribute worth and dignity to him. Therefore, I read his op-ed piece. And I gotta say, he had some really good things to say, and I want to share them with you. He said that though it might be surprising, considering all the craziness associated with the Mike Tyson persona, one of my best qualities is my unerring discipline, which my mentor and first trainer, Cus D'Amato, instilled in me. And he said that he wanted to replace his craving for drugs and alcohol, which he still has. He wants to replace that with a craving to be a better person. He said, I've learned that being sober is more than just avoiding drugs or alcohol. It's a lifestyle focused on making moral choices and elevating the things that make life worth living to the forefront. Don't get me wrong. If I craved drugs or alcohol, I'd still give in. I could never fight those cravings. But when I'm focused on doing good and being good, and practice the day-to-day mechanics of a sober, healthy life, I don't get those urges to do the bad things to myself and to others. And what he remembered was growing up. And he said, even growing up in Brownsville, in Brooklyn, he said, even at my lowest points, I'd still be somewhat outside myself, thinking of the effect my actions had on other people. I'm on the pathway to humility, Tyson said, fully aware that you can't rule until you've served. It really impressed me. You know, a man who has become a caricature, I think, in terms of his violence. The use of his word humility impressed me a great deal. It puts me in mind of another poem, and this one is by Louisa Fletcher called The Land of Beginning Again. I wish that there was some wonderful place in the land of beginning again, where all our mistakes and all our heartaches and all our poor, selfish grief could be dropped like a shabby coat at the door and never be put on again. I wish we could come on it all unaware, like the hunter who finds a lost trail. And I wish that the one whom our blindness had done the greatest injustice of all could be there at the gates, like an old friend that waits for the comrade he's gladdest to hail. We could find all the things we intended to do, but forgot and remembered too late, like praises unspoken, promises broken, and all the 1,001 little duties neglected that might have perfected the day for one less fortunate. It wouldn't be possible not to be kind in the land of beginning again, and the ones we misjudged and the ones whom we grudged their moments of glory here would find in the grasp of our loving hand clasp more than penitent lips could explain. So I wish that there were some wonderful place called the land of beginning again, where all our mistakes and all our heartaches and all our poor, selfish grief could be dropped like a shabby old coat at the door and never be put on again. So now, I'd like to turn our attention to staying. What do you want to keep doing? What do you want to stay the same? And for that, I'm going to ask, let's see, maybe Tom could do this with a wireless mic, and go around to folks. What would you like to stay the same? What would you like to continue doing? What is something good about what you're doing now that doesn't need to change? That you don't feel any remorse or regret about, but that you can continue doing and share it with us. So, any takers? Yeah, Eleanor.
First, is there a wireless mic expert that knows how to turn this on?
Ooh, okay. Oh, there we go, there's our expert.
Good work.
Thank you. So, Eleanor.
I really want to continue sharing the adventures of life with old and new friends.
Sharing adventures of life. Terrific. Anyone else? We've got Meg back here.
I would like my relationship with my daughter to stay the same.
And of course, those of us who've been here a while know Clara. I've known her since she was barely walking. Yeah. Anyone else? What do you feel really good about that you'd like to experience more? And please tell us.
Continuing my practice of yoga.
Wonderful. Continue your practice of yoga. Great. Thank you. Now, see, that's something I'd like to start. Okay, Terry.
Teaching and therefore learning.
Thank you. And isn't that the most important part about teaching, Terry? That we continue to learn as we teach and learn from our students. Thank you. Yeah. Barbara.
I'm continuing to teach my philosophy class that I've been teaching for 8 years, and I love it.
Wonderful. And Barbara, I hope that you will also continue with the Death Cafe, which, a little plug, will be in this room this afternoon. Thank you. Yeah, Ken.
I'm very upset about the Sunni-Shiite conflict, and I wish Iran and Saudi Arabia would get together and have a peace treaty.
So we hope for his peace, don't we? Always. Yeah, Andrew?
I'd like to continue practicing letting go, to take control of things.
Letting go. And making that decision, right? What things do we hold on to and what things do we let go of? That's an ethical decision that's often difficult and a challenge. Yeah. Phyllis?
I'd like to continue the ritual of seeing everybody here on Sundays, what with your smiling faces and your greetings.
Well, I officially retired more than a couple of years ago, but now I think I'm actually retiring and have to work on what does that mean and where do I spend my time.
I'd like to continue drawing spiders.
Yes. Yes. And I would like us to have an exhibit of your spiders here. Has anyone seen Pat's work?
No.
She's a wonderful artist, yes. Elaine.
I would like to continue being a member of ethical culture.
And I'm going to continue in Elaine's writing class. Thank you for helping me to love writing again.
I'd like to continue doing my Pilates exercise and hope that we can continue our ethics in the theater. Later.
Oh, yeah, Margaret.
I like to continue to give more of my heart to a lot of people.
And you just want you to. Yeah, I think Pat over here.
I'd like to continue, if I can, to be an influence on the lives of my nieces and nephews. They're at the point of their lives where they're trying to make it big, and they're doing very well. But they lose the big picture sometimes of what's going on in the politics in the country and the people who are not making it. And they listen to their Aunt Pat so far. But I have to be careful, but I really do want to continue that because I think it's very important for people like them to see beyond their own ambitions.
They need your wisdom. And that's another reason I love our intergenerational community, that we can share wisdom with one another. Andrew.
To your point that you brought up earlier about having questions and not being forced to provide answers, is for me finding the strength in vulnerability. And by finding the strength in vulnerability, I don't force myself to produce answers. And there's a very good theme for this year coming up, so I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. And Andrew grew up on our Ethics for Children's program, and he's back.
And I was his Sunday school.
Oh, and Carol is his teacher. Wonderful.
I'd like to continue to contribute to our happy and healthy lifestyle from home.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate your having the courage to speak in public, because public speaking still remains one of the top 5 fears that people have. So I really appreciate that, and I hope that you'll continue that conversation. We'll be having lunch later, and I hope that you'll continue that conversation at your tables. So, in conclusion, keep working on what's working for you and sharing it with others. And when you do make resolutions, I would hope that it would be perhaps less out of regret and remorse and more out of a sense of trying something new, maybe pushing that envelope a little bit, new challenges. Remember what we often said in the Ethics for Children's program at the Brooklyn Society, and that is that the key to being ethical is to balance kindness and fairness, understanding that we're often kind without being fair and often fair without being kind. But to have that in our awareness and to hold that can help us through many difficult dilemmas. In closing, I have, yes, another poem. Meg asked me this week, she stopped in and she said, what do you do when you write a platform address? How do you start it? And really what I do is I go through a collection of poems and I look to see, what resonates with me and what speaks to the topic. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. You can get a poem every day by going on the Writer's Almanac. And it's from Public Radio International. Garrison Keillor does the poem. And it's a wonderful gift to turn on my computer every day and have a poem there. And a little bit of history about what happened on this day 200 years ago or whatever. But then I also go through a discernment process. Is this a poem that I want to add to my now over 600-page collection? Or is it one that I just want to let go of? Well, this one is a keeper. And it's called Secret of Life. And it's by Diana der Hovensian. Once, during the war, on a bus going to Portsmouth, a Navy Yard worker told me the secret of life. The secret of life, he said, can never be passed down one generation to the other. The secret of life, he said, is hunger. It makes an open hand. The secret of life is money, but only the small coins. The secret of life, he said, is love. You become what you lose. The secret of life, he said, is water. The world will end in flood. The secret of life, he said, is circumstance. If you catch the right bus at the right time, you will sit next to the secret teller who will whisper it in your ear.